I again just welcome you and thank you for joining us today. My name is Sydney Gary, and I am the Conference and Communications Coordinator for the Natural Start Alliance. And today we have the wonderful Jessica Fong, who is the editor of her newly published book, Seeing Ourselves in Nature. And joining her to discuss the book are contributing authors Lotus Chaney and Flor Villanueva-Winter. So this book was put on our radar when Jessica reached out to us in 2023 with an ask to help solicit contributing authors. And we were just so excited about the premise of her project. And now it is finally here, and we're all so excited. We know that equity-centered work in the field of nature-based education is a matter of growing interest and pursuit. But that it can also feel quite daunting for those of us, educators, administrators, policymakers, researchers, who may be newer to making more of a concerted effort to make sure that all people and young children feel welcome and respected and valued in nature spaces. And even for those of us who do have experience with centering equity, which should be centered across all the boards all the time, but those of us who do have experience with this work in nature-based early learning, it can often feel like siloed work or isolated work, particularly when we're faced with politicized opposition. But the great news is that none of us are actually alone in this work, and that everyone should feel empowered to be a contributing force to this movement that recognizes and honors and protects everyone's, including young children's, experiences in and with nature. We believe that Jessica's new book, Seeing Ourselves in Nature, stands as an open invitation to simply pay witness to the lived experiences of Black and Brown people and communities and nature, and an invitation to imagine and act toward what's possible in equitable nature-based early childhood education. The book was just released last month, and so we're so happy to welcome Jessica today, along with Lotus and Flor, who are featured in the book. And to introduce our speakers, as I've mentioned, Jessica Fong is here with us. She is the Director of Education at Open Lands, where she leads nature-based programming for educators, students, and families across Chicago. And as a Latina educator and child of Guatemalan immigrants, Jessica began teaching in Guatemala in 2007 and has since become a national advocate for dual language and nature-based early childhood education. She holds 2 master's degrees and is currently pursuing a doctorate in educational sustainability. Lotus Chaney is an environmental researcher with more than 12 years of experience in the field and a lifetime of experience playing outside. Lotus is also a farmer, a food science educator, a master gardener, sustainable finance enthusiast, agroecologist, outdoor classroom specialist, food literacy educator, conference speaker, and homeschooler. Whew! Her personal projects include using action research to explore the concept of epigenetics through immersion in nature and healthy relationships with nutritious food. And lastly, but certainly not least, Flor Villanueva-Winter is a native of Colombia and is an early childhood educator at Belmont Cragin Elementary, which is a dual language Chicago public school. She's been teaching preschoolers following the Reggio Emilia approach for more than 19 years. And Flor is a recipient of the Cole McCormick Early Childhood Teaching Award for her work with developmentally disabled infants and families. She's also conducted seminars for the Chicago Metro Association for the Education of Young Children and holds a master's degree in early childhood education from Erickson Institute. So those are our wonderful speakers today, who I am so happy and honored to pass it off to. I will go ahead and stop my screen share and pass it to you ladies. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction, Sydney. I'm emotional, I know, and sorry. Just thinking about, I'm sorry. Well, I don't want to apologize because these tears are tears of passion and joy and excitement for this book that has taken a couple years to come to fruition. So let me take a moment and give you all gratitude for being here, gratitude to my fellow authors for joining me in this journey, and just the joy of this book. Sorry, everyone. But I am here to share this wonderful book that I really hope resonates with you all in the beautiful words that Sydney said. And let me get started so that I can move on from these tearful joys, tears of joy, tears of joy. So today we're going to talk to you about our wonderful book. I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction, and I want to really focus on my fellow authors. So I'm going to try to do my introduction as briefly as possible. And then I'll pass it to them so we can share a little bit. The goal is to give you a teaser of the book so that it motivates you to perhaps to purchase your own copy and really purchase it for other people, for fellow educators, for if you're a professor or if you're a policy person or if you're someone who can influence additional educators in the world of nature-based learning, to purchase copies for them or add it to your syllabus, add it to your PD, that you professional education that you provide to your fellow teachers. So we really want this book to get in as many hands as possible because it is so important. All right, so here's our introduction. And I wanted to start with this quote from Sheila Williams-Ridge, who was kind enough to write a quote on the back of the book, if you have a copy. And I really wanted to share this because she also succinctly said some beautiful things about the book. And I will read it because I love what she wrote. Seeing Ourselves in Nature is not just a book. It's an invitation to center the voices of Black and Brown children and educators to reimagine what's possible in early childhood education. So really, just like Sydney said, we really hope this book is an invitation for you to reimagine what is possible in early childhood education for Black and Brown children. So why this book and why now? And I wanted to pull from the book itself and read just a little portion of it to share why this book and why now. And this is on the bottom of page 9. It says, or I guess I wrote, nature-based learning has the potential to finally bring equity to the educational experiences of Black and Brown children, removing the systemic barriers that plague students of color in traditional educational settings and bringing justice-based education. By virtue of the work and the setting, this educational model focuses on curiosity, inquiry, and child-led learning. At its core, nature-based play and learning provide children with individualized experiences that take the whole child into account. As Ioma Uroka and colleagues in 2020 wrote, it is critical to provide different learning modalities and opportunities for children to better meet their needs. It's clear that traditional Eurocentric ways of teaching and learning are failing students of color. And really, that's why this book is so important. I really wanted to share the stories of what educators of color are doing around the country, and really find in this moment that is very politicized, not things that we all share, right? Things that we all agree on. And I know everyone in this webinar is very clear on the benefits of nature play, clear on the benefits of nature-based education. And we know that there's so many similarities among all of us, and using that as one of our forces towards a more loving and kind world, and a more justice and equity-focused world for our students. The other big reason is that there is a big disparity in the access that children of color have to nature-based learning. Now, this is a report from the National Association for Environmental Education from 2022, which is, I believe, the last time they published this report. And they do surveys of nature pre-Ks around the country to see what the racial makeup is of students who are enrolled in nature pre-K. Of course, this is just nature pre-Ks. It's not, beyond that, but it does give a good snapshot. And I would imagine that if we were to extrapolate this out to other experiences, it would be very similar. But you can see that the vast majority of children who benefit from nature-based play and learning are children that are white. And everyone else, all the children of color, Indigenous and Black and, Asian American and Latinx are really in a very small percentage.
Yeah.
So why this book matters now? Oh, and I read that already, so I wanted to read that part. And again, it's about justice, it's about liberation, and it's about equity. And then the other thing, which we've heard this a lot too, right, is representation matters. And this is from a quote from the book on page 5. The lack of these stories creates a lack of agency for people of color in nature. Where we don't see ourselves, we feel we don't belong. And that is really true in this moment where some estimates are saying that 60% of humans on the planet have lost their connection to nature. Children in Nature Network just published something today about the radius of children roaming outside in the world has dropped from miles to just a couple of feet. So our children really aren't seeing themselves in nature. When children don't see themselves in nature and families don't see themselves in nature, they feel they don't belong, which adds to exacerbates the situation where children and families are not engaging with nature, not reconnecting to nature because they feel they don't belong there. And in the book, I do go into why that is, right? Historical and systemic racism, environmental injustices have kept people of color from really feeling like they don't belong, from being forcefully excluded from the national parks to being forcefully removed, indigenous folks being removed from their lands in the time of colonization. So all of these and many other stories, including children of color playing in nature, like Trayvon Martin, and being murdered. So all of these things create situations where people of color don't feel safe and they feel like they don't belong in nature. And this image is something I've used a lot in various other presentations. It's an image collage together of thousands, hundreds of thousands of images of children in nature and put together. And as you can see, even though these are hundreds of thousands of images, the vast majority of children who engage in nature play. In this, obviously, it's an image, but we know that that is the reality, are white children, right? And again, we know the benefits, we know all the amazing things about nature-based play and learning, and we want to ensure that not only one subset of people are getting the benefits and the children are getting the benefits of nature-based play. All right, so now, I'm sorry, I think I went a little bit over, but that's fine. But I want to give all the rest of the time to my fellow authors. I'm going to pass it to Lotus to share about chapter 3 and go in depth.
Thank you, Jessica. I hope everyone can hear me okay. But yeah, so I am one of the co-authors of the book. I am Lotus. I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee right now. And I am also the lead researcher and farmer at Buttonbush Farm. Um, and this is a little bit more about my chapter and what I'm going to be sharing today. So first, I'll go over a little bit more about me. So what are some of my own childhood experiences and how have they led me to where I am today? I'll talk about environmental injustice and epigenetics. What are they and what are some influencing factors? And then lastly, I'll talk about nature-based play and how that is a key part of my parenting style and my teaching style in general. And then I'll share a little bit more about where we are now. Next slide, please. And sprinkled within my presentation, I have some brain breaks. And so these are all different quotes that relate to my chapter in the book. So that's what you'll see every now and then. And so here's one from Walt Whitman. Now I see the secret of making the best person. It is to grow in the open air and to eat and sleep with the earth. Next slide. Thank you, Jessica. So yeah, I am a country girl at heart. I grew up in the city, so I share here a little bit more about the good, the bad, and the outcomes. So yeah, I grew up in a very small Midwestern farming town, surrounded by my extended family, my grandparents, my parents, with lots of time outside. Then my immediate family, we moved to the inner city of Inglewood, California in very early childhood. Now, this was an extremely different landscape. But I still grew up going to parks, going to farmers markets, eating nutritious food, and camping. So, what are some of the realities behind this good experience? My small Midwestern hometown was also home to an actual asbestos factory in the 70s, and then a Purina dog factory very close to where I grew up that was sold to Cargill in the 80s and is still open today. What are some of the outcomes of that? I currently have chronic asthma. I have more than 7 environmental allergies, and I still absolutely love being outside whenever I can. And I'll get into how this is related further on. So now we'll talk about environmental injustice and epigenetics. So what is environmental injustice? We can go to the next slide. And so here's the definition that I came up with on my own. There's lots of different definitions and interpretations of environmental injustice. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it is also now illegal. So don't tell anyone that I'm talking about it. But it is the intentional removal, blocking, or disruption of environmental benefits like clean air, water, and access to green spaces. These actions are overwhelmingly directed towards BIPOC people and rural communities, much like the one that I grew up in. We can go to the next slide. And I'll share a little bit more about a study that was done. And so this is more so related to the nature-related environmental injustice area. And so this is the study that was done in 2017 across the United States. And it shows the percentage of people living in a nature-deprived area. What is that? Much like this picture of Los Angeles, so you see there are some trees around where the people are, but primarily you see cities and buildings. So 23% of white people are living in nature deprived areas, 68% of Black people, and 70%, 74% of non-white people. And so why is environmental justice or environmental injustices important? We can go to the next slide and I'll talk about why. Oh, first, let's take a brain break. Um, so this says the things he sees are not just remembered, they form a part of his soul. And so this is from Maria Montessori, who is an educational philosopher, and I'm sure many of us know her for the Montessori educational model. Then we can go to the next slide. Okay, so why is environmental justice or injustice important? Well, we're going to talk about epigenetics. What is that? It's the study of how our environment influences our genes by changing the chemicals or the way that they act. So we're not changing the DNA specifically, but we're kind of turning on or turning off specific things that our genes do. And so now I will share an example that I find helpful. So here's an example of a harmful epigenetic experience or response. So a child is living in a neighborhood near busy highways and maybe factories. Every day they breathe in more air pollution, and so they have fewer, and they also have fewer safe green spaces to play in outside. So their actual DNA, right, their instruction book is the same. Their eyes are not going to change from brown to blue, but the environment and those experiences kind of add sticky notes to their DNA. So one sticky note might say, let's turn on a little bit more of that stress because there's a lot going on and I'm not quite sure how to handle it. Another sticky note might say, let's also maybe weaken my immune regulation. Um, which can cause lifelong health issues, as we all know. Okay, and then we can go to the next slide. Another brain break. So, if we want children to flourish, to truly become empowered, let us allow them to love the earth before we ask them to save it. We hear so many conversations now about climate change and climate justice and all of these things. But as Jessica mentioned, if we don't feel connected to the earth, then how will we save it? How will we even know how if we don't feel connected to it? And that's from David Sobel. And then we can go to the next slide. Awesome. And so now we'll talk about what we're all here for. So we talked a little bit about environmental injustice, right? What is the problem that some of us are dealing with? Why is it important? Epigenetics, it can literally change how your DNA performs, what your DNA does, what your body does. And so this is what I have found as a solution in my everyday life and for some of the students that I teach, and that's nature-based play. What is that? It's an activity that gets children active or thinking actively outdoors with the end goal of building skills and the ability to play without much control, right? No control from me as the parent or any other adults that are around. And here's a recent photo of my pumpkin hunting with Ren. Then we can go to the next slide. Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to tie it back to epigenetics. Here is an helpful example of what epigenetics does and what it has the potential to do. A child spends afternoons climbing trees, playing in the dirt, and eating vegetables from the family garden. So these healthy exposures don't actually change the DNA, right? They're not going to go from short to tall, but they might place those sticky notes again. However, these are now more helpful. Let's turn on those genes for stronger bones and muscle development. Let's also maybe turn down my cortisol reactions because I'm in a safe space and I feel connected to it. Let's also strengthen that immune response, right? I'm outside a lot, I'm playing in the dirt, I'm interacting with lots of different things, and I want to make sure I'm staying healthy. Now we can go to the next slide. Awesome. And so here's another photo of Ren, my little one. Um, and this is now where I'm going to talk about how we play in nature. This is specific to myself and my experiences, what I have access to, but it's a lot of integrating those epigenetic outcomes, the concept of epigenetics, using action research and alternative education like the Montessori model into our nature-based play. And again, my parenting and teaching style. We can go to the next slide. And now I'm going to share some examples of what I have found to be successful in our experiences in nature. And so that's number one, and almost the most important, is having a flexible definition of nature. So here we have two different images. On the left, that is myself, Ren, and my family at our budding new farm in North Georgia. And so we're very clearly in the um, stereotypical idea of nature, right? We're surrounded by trees. There's lots of green grass. There are birds and plants and bugs everywhere. Now, on the other side, we are at an electric vehicle charging station. You can see the asphalt. There are some trees in the background. Oops, sorry. Yep. And then on the top of that concrete, there's a very small lizard. And this is important because Ren does not enjoy, or he didn't used to enjoy touching small animals or bugs, but he was very intrigued by this lizard. He really wanted to touch it. The lizard actually stayed right where it was so he could get close. And he was experiencing the ability to be brave, to be curious, and to really interact with this lizard. It's not a stereotypical natural place, right? But he is indeed engaging with nature, and this was a meaningful experience. And now we can go to the next slide. Yeah, and another thing that we work very hard to do is to create high quality experiences. And again, this has multiple different definitions, but I have two different images here. So on the left, we traveled to Costa Rica, which is actually where Ren was born. And he was obsessed with volcanoes at the time. And we just so happened to be near a volcano. And so we hiked to the top. He was 18 months old and he definitely had a tantrum. And I talk more about it in the book. But this was an example of maybe a high quality experience, right? It was child led. He had this obsession, this very strong interest in volcanoes, and we had the ability to go and explore that in person. On the other side is our local lake. There was a down tree and we climbed it. And so this was a little bit more of an everyday experience and something that we had access to. And so when I say high quality, I really mean being present, allowing the child to really interact with that space intentionally, and creating a safe space and connection, which leads us to our next slide.
2 minutes, Lotus, okay?
Okay, thank you. We can go to the next slide. Awesome. And so, yeah, creating connections to place and people. So here's a kind of before and after. Before he was born, we went strawberry picking, one of my favorite activities. And then after he was born, we got to go back and he got to really create a connection to this place, and also to the people that were with him during this time. We can go to the next slide. Encouraging supervised risky play. So again, two different examples of what I mean by that. And so on the right side, he's climbing a tree. Some can categorize it as being risky. However, throughout this experience, we've been teaching him the skills to help himself in this situation, right? He knows how to get up there, he knows how to get down, and he knows how to ask for help. And so he's really learning more about risk management, how to ask for help, how to engage with this environment, especially if it looks a little bit tricky. You can go to the next slide. Amazing. So we're getting close to the end, and we all know lots of the different benefits of nature-based play, but I've shared some that I've personally experienced here. Yeah, robust vocabulary, STEM immersion, social interaction, self-confidence, stress regulation, risk management. So these are some of the benefits of nature-based play that I've seen in my own research and practice. Then we'll go to the next slide. And these are some of the listed skills that have influenced my own life or my work today. Have you noticed any differences? Probably
Mm.
not, because they are all the same. So every skill every benefit that is connected to nature-based play, I have personally experienced and used in my everyday life and in my work, including self-confidence, risk management, improved sleep, all of those things. Now we can go to the next slide. Amazing. And so this is my last slide, and it shows a little bit more about where we are now. So again, I mentioned I am the lead researcher and farmer at Buttonbush Farm. And so carrying this experience, we are building Farm to be a place-based educational farm, lots of demonstrations, lots of workshops. We're also a native nursery. And so we really want to encourage nature-based play and the use of native plants to increase biodiversity in the Southeast, which again is my solution to, increasing natural spaces for those that live around me. So thank you all, and I will now pass it back to Jessica.
Thank you, Lotus. That was great. Oh, I'm so proud of us all. I have to say it. I have to say it. Okay, so I'm going to share chapter 13, which is one of the chapters that I wrote in addition to just in the introduction piece. And I really wanted to share actually just in general why this book came to fruition and what kind of motivated me real quick about to write this book. And as an early kind of person looking into nature-based play a couple years ago. Well, actually, it's probably been more than a couple of years, but when I was early in the nature-based world, I remember being pretty much sometimes the only person of color in these conferences. And this was probably, I would say, 5 to 10 years ago now, and it has definitely changed. I do want to acknowledge that. I've seen a huge shift in, especially after 2020, in the number of educators of color and people of color at these conferences. But then there were very few of us to the point where I would see one and we kind of make eye contact and know we were the only ones there. But and then also in the research that I was reading at the time, right? It was a lot of white researchers, white authors writing about their experiences with children in nature and their research with children in nature. And still to this day, the research is really still focused mostly white students, white educators, and their stories. And as we know, to really understand the human experience, we need to have everybody's voices and everybody at the table. And so this was one of the big kind of motivating forces behind me writing this book. And so the beauty of this book is that you will find a lot of moments where you're like, oh, we do that too, or I've thought about that too. But we really hope, and I really hope that there are a lot of moments where you're like, oh, I didn't think about that, right? Maybe you'd never heard of epigenetics. And maybe there are other points in the book where you hadn't thought about the impact of environmental injustice or looking at stories like the origin of lacrosse, right, is an indigenous story. The origin of surfboards is an indigenous story. the origin of cowboys and farming in this country, and that culture is a Black story. And so really thinking about where we can add in all of the voices and make sure that the voices that are there and the ones that are in mainstream are not the only ones. And so this book can really help you kind of expand your understanding of the stories that are out there. So I just wanted to say that before I go into my chapter. So chapter 13 is about a study that I did when I was in the classroom a couple years ago in a Reggio Emilia inspired school. And so Reggio Emilia inspired, and Flor will also talk about similar theory, but it basically is about curiosity, it's about inquiry, it's about child-led learning, as well as teacher interaction with the children and communication and dialogue with the children to explore topics and explore interests that the children bring to the table. And in this particular year, in the fall, I took my students with my co-teacher, who's in the photo, Francie, to our local park. And the children were really interested in digging in the soil just in the park. And of course, when you start digging in the soil in the fall in Chicago, you will inevitably run into worms. And so the kids started to find a lot of worms. And our teaching assistant, Bertha, was also really into worm composting as well in our classroom. So it kind of lend itself to what the children were finding in the park. And as the children were finding these worms, they were really motivated to bring them into the classroom. And I usually do not allow that kind of thing because, of course, we want to be respectful of our animal kin and our animal friends, and make sure that they are, you know, in their environment that they need to be in. But with worms, because there are so many of them and so plentiful on our planet, I thought it would be okay to bring a couple back to the classroom. And we also used the compost bin worms, so there were additional worms that were available to us. So the children really started to explore the worms in this study, and we turned it into a year long. And you would be amazed how much you can do with worms over the course of a whole school year. But in the early stages, you can see the image on the left. We were exploring a material, which was black Sharpies in our classroom. And the children were using the Sharpies to draw about the worms and to kind of expand their understanding using these black Sharpies and white paper. And you can kind of barely see it, but in this image, in that middle circle, there's the little yellow splotches. And that's where this child put the worms on the paper itself. And the worms were leaving their trace on the paper. And this child drew a circle around those worms and said that that circle was their home. And then on the left-hand side, she said that these were the hearts for the worms. And then on the right-hand side, she said that that was the food for the worms. And so really children connect with nature through their own worldview and their own relationships. And as early childhood educators, we know that children bring their experiences from home into the classroom, and they come with that through the door, but it really is our responsibility to make space for those relationships that they have and to make space for their stories and their experiences in the classroom. And the worms really became a way for the children to be able to bring those experiences and those stories into the classroom as they started to connect with the worms in similar ways, as funny as it sounds, as they connect with their families at home, as they connected with their families at home. So the worms became an extension of their own families. And children also connected with nature through movement in this study. So this little one was sharing a journal that we had sent home in the winter, and she was sharing a story about the worm that she had taken home. And so to backtrack, I forgot to tell you all that one of the things that we did in the winter was send home worms in little plastic containers so that the children were able to share their love of their worm with their families. So we made that intentional connection between the home and the classroom. And so each child decided what their name of their worm was, and they made a little home for them. And you can see the child on the right in that far right image giving her worm, Big Boy, a hug as much as you can hug a worm, as she was connecting with that child, with that worm. Um, and so you can see that children also connect with nature through love, right? And it's something that in a Eurocentric way, in a Eurocentric worldview, we're kind of pushed away from that. We're pushed away from connecting to nature through love, through joy, through relationships. And we're asked to not anthropomorphize animals, right? We're told that that's not good. It's bad, I guess, in some ways, if in a Eurocentric worldview, but in an indigenous centric worldview, we know that our animal friends and our animal kin and our animal family is an integral part of who we are. And so allowing space for that in your classroom and allowing space for more than just scientific inquiry with animals and with nature is really important. And it's something that we did in this study with worms. And so one of the things that we found as well in this study is that this was really a great way to connect children with special needs to nature. And this little one is a really great story because she, on the right-hand side with the gloves, really wanted to hold the worm. She would repeatedly ask us, please, I want to hold a worm. Can I have a worm? And as soon as we would put the worm in her hand, she would scream and throw the worm in the air. And, we lost many worms, but that's fine. They're plentiful. But it happened many, many times, and we just couldn't figure out what what the issue was, what her challenge was, because she really wanted to hold one, but she just couldn't. And finally, my co-teacher, in all of her wisdom, realized that it was a sensory thing, right? Worms are wet, they're squiggly, they're cold. And so we gave her a pair of you can see they're adult size latex gloves that we had in the classroom. And after that moment, she was really able to finally engage with the worms in the way that she wanted to. And we gave her that access point. And by the end of the school year, you can see her holding a worm in her hand as she had worked through that sensory sensation with the worms and gotten to a point where she was able to hold the worms in her hand and have that loving connection that she really wanted to have with the worms. And this might be my last slide, but the funds of knowledge that we bring, again, making that intentional connection with family and the classroom and having children bring all of their experiences into the classroom and honoring those experiences. In this situation, in this photo, you can see the grandma was working with the little one whose worm was named Big Boy. And she was telling her, here, roll it in this way. And she was speaking in Spanish. She said, roll it this way, como hacemos tortillas en la casa, right? How we make tortillas in the home, right? How we roll them how we roll the masa of tortillas in our hands at home. And so they were making that connection in this moment of exploring worms back to what they knew about rolling and doing what they do at home to make their family meal and connecting it to the worm. And so again, children bring their funds of knowledge, is what we call it in dual language education, into the classroom to explore and to be curious. And then, this is my last, I swear this is my last one. This is another situation where we intentionally connected families with the study. And throughout the school year, we had workshops where we would invite families in to the school to really engage with the worms in similar ways that the children were engaging, so that the learnings happened both in the school and at home. And this mom really wanted to support her child. She was really cognizant and really excited about the learning and the curiosity that he was building in our classroom, but she just could not, similar to the little one, could not stand the feeling of them. She found worms gross and told us so, but she was committed to being there for her son. And so she was able to interact with the worms in her way. Similar to the gloves, she used another access point, which were the paintbrushes, and she was able to manipulate and interact with the worms with the opposite end of a paintbrush. And again, that cultural understanding that education is important, that Latino families bring, and all families of color bring, and really wanting to be there for their children. And so that's just a snippet of chapter 13. There's much more in the book, and many more beautiful photos. And I'm going to pass it to Flor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jessica. Well, okay, my chapter number 14 is related to trees and the park. and is related to Max. Max is the tree that students provide their names. Well, my background, you already know something about me. My name is Flor. I was born in Bogota, Colombia. I moved to United States in 1987, attended Erickson Institute in Chicago and got my master's in early childhood education. And since that moment, I started following the Reggio Emilia approach of education. All right. Now about my teaching, my teaching philosophy. As I told you since the very beginning, I went to Reggio Emilia approach, and the Reggio Emilia approach has this interest for nature. My belief also is that children always learn through exploring, and when the nature becomes visible to them through senses, they transform the children's life, and they make an important part of their lives, I believe, forever. Okay, so the story of Max, the tree, is a story, I will say, of all the trees that the children and I encounter around the classroom and in our local park. And also my classroom had a tree in front of us. So the children were looking at this tree many times, but it was not enough. They wanted more interactions with the tree. So we decided that it was good to go outside and visit the tree. They did it very well. They really started having the connection with the tree, and we did more visits, and they talk about the tree. And my idea was, okay, if they are interested in this tree, let's go further and let's go to our local park, and also around the school, to see the trees and become more familiar with them. Okay, now in the sequence of this study, here we are in the park. Here we are in the park with many visits. We explore the trees. We look at the little pieces that the trees had on the floor, touch it. Even here you can see this girl. She was hugging the tree, starting having a lot of emotions with the tree. One day, and I asked them to find one tree. And I asked them if they wanted to adopt a tree. First of all, I asked them if they knew the word adopt. Many answers about that, but the answers were really good. I remember one answer. They said, well, adopt is one child is not my brother, but he goes my home and eats with me. So beautiful, I love it. And many other ways to interact or interpret what it was an adoption. I told them about that we were going to adopt a tree, but they chose the tree that they wanted to adopt. They chose it, and then we considered that we have to give him a name. And here they had different names. They came out, no, not yet. Not yet. Go back, please, Jessica. Thank you. They have different names, and the name of the tree, the name, and they voted, and the winner was Max. So they wrote messages. Those are messages that they wrote and put it in Max. Many messages. We went over there and we put the messages, and one of the students said, I love all the trees and they love me. I want to hug a tree. Expressing their feelings by writing and sending messages. Here in this other photograph, we are taking care of the tree. And the child said, taking care of nature makes me happy. Collaboration is another interesting thing that we see in this study. Students took care of the trees and in the park. And here in the classroom, this girl is making with clay, is making a nest. And she said that I make a nest for the bird living in the tree. So they are representing her feelings about the tree, about nature, about life outside with her representation. This is one of my thoughts, that the benefits of exploring the outdoors and the indoors, nature, indoors, outdoors, reflect the students behaviors, feelings, and attitudes. And I saw this through the year because this study took a year from October, beginning the fall, until the end of the year in June. So during this time, I saw how they converse, how they help each other, and how they collaborate. This is a collaboration work that we made together, teachers and students, putting together all the artifacts that they made, representing trees and representing Max. They did it in clay, they did it in wire, they did also drawings using Sharpie paint. As teachers, early childhood teachers, you know, we learn, and the students learn by wonder and exploring. And here we have a student exploring with the tree. She has here the tree. We took a picture of Max, and here is the picture. You cannot see it. And she did the picture. I mean, not the picture. She did the drawing, and from there, she represented in wire, and she was doing this, and how these interpretations and this work go home with them, and they talk about that with the parents and with their friends. And parents and friends are part also of this project because they know about what the students are doing in the classroom. Talking a little bit about the process, how we put together, what are the practices that I used to do during one study. I follow Reggio Emilian approach principles where students learn through their own interest. Therefore, they become the protagonist of their own learning, and they construct their learning how, making observations, in our case, visiting the trees and the park, exploring with senses, using different languages to represent thoughts like painting, drawing, wiring, play, taking the natural pieces, they encounter the pieces in the park. They bring these pieces from the park. They make things with the little things that they made with the leaves, with flowers, or whatever is on the ground. They analyze the artifacts in the classroom, reflect about their encounters through dialogues, conversations, oral or written language, written stories, or class presentations. In other words, the students developed and construct their own learning by experimenting, discovering, and using their 100 languages, according to Dr. Lori Malagruzzi. Students and teachers become researchers, and teachers, the role of my role as teacher is guide them. And here we see here one representation that they did after they pick up in the leaves. You know, the leaves were changing, was in fall, and the leaves were changing different colors. They pick up the leaves that they like it. And in the classroom, those are the leaves. I put them on a paper, you know. And in the classroom, I asked them if they want to represent those leaves by drawing them. And this is what is the representation that they need, you know. And
2 minutes, Flor.
Oh my goodness. Okay, culmination of the study. How culminate the study? Parents were part of the study, and half of the parents went to the studio and made with the students. They made max. It was a big max. It was a big tree with clay. Okay. The next one, please, Jessica. The next one. The next one.
There's a little delay, sorry.
Okay, and here we have the students doing the making the Reese Park in acrylics. At the end of the year, this is very interesting thing. At the end of the year, students across the entire preschool program use clay and natural materials they collected in the park to create nests as they deliver gifts for Max. That was the end of the year. That was a collaboration among all the whole school. The class wrote notes and got presents for Max. Students and presents generated around Max to present their presents, sing nature songs, and they have learned what they have learned in the classroom. And the way that Max strengthened community with our classrooms as well as across our wider preschool program became clear in this culminating study. The end. Thank you. I think this is the last one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Flor. Thank you so much, Lotus, as well. That was wonderful. And again, it's just a sneak peek of what is in the book. There's so many beautiful stories that haven't been told, and this is the first of hopefully many more books where these stories are told and we delve into different topics with educators of color and families of color and children of color, and really starting to bring these stories to the fore and to the front. And so this is just my concluding quote from the book as well. Every Black and brown child in the United States access to the benefits of nature-based learning, which are so clear. The research is clear the benefits of nature-based learning and nature play. We cannot sit on the sidelines while Black and brown children continue to lose their connection to nature in the name of academic rigor and catching up. And that's on page 9. So again, please consider adding this book to your repertoire, adding this book to your classrooms, to your organizations. And there's a little promo code here that you can use for 20% off to order the book from Red Leaf if you'd like to. It's also on Amazon, although I heard there's only one copy left, but maybe they'll get more. So we shall see. And then we do want to add, if you do want to reach out to any of these authors, and you can reach any of the additional authors through me. So if you have other chapters you'd like to reach out to any other authors, please let me know. I'm happy to share their contact information to anyone who would like to have them as speakers or do presentations or workshops. Or all of these authors are incredible experts in their right and what they do. And I would love to get their voices out there in the nation and as well as the world. So that is, I believe, that's my last slide. So I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, all of you. Wow. Incredible. Thank you for our wonderful speakers today. For those, again, who do want a copy of the book, you can purchase them, as Jessica said, either on Amazon or directly from Red Leaf Press, and we can drop those links in the chat. As I said in the beginning, both the webinar recording and any relevant resources will be made available over the next week on our website. So we'll be sure to send an email out to all registrants to notify you all when these materials are posted. And I just have 2 quick announcements for you all. In thinking about this theme of equity and diversity that I feel was so central to today's webinar discussion, I just wanted to highlight some sessions included in this year's online conference that contributes to the conversation about how we can honor and support diverse relations in and with nature. Registration is open today and for the, as long as content is available until next summer. And you can access these sessions among many others, and includes posters, workshops, site tours, as well as certificates of participation for every session you attend. So visit conference.naturalstart.org to register today. And then lastly, if you haven't already, save the date for NatStart 26. We are heading to San Antonio, Texas, June 24th through the 27th, 2026, where the conference will be hosted at the San Antonio Zoo. The staff of Will Smith Zoo School is ready to welcome our attendees for concurrent sessions, both indoors and outdoors, in the school's beautiful, extensive outdoor play and learning areas. And then we'll have plenary sessions hosted at the zoo's brand new event space, the Ralston, which has incredible views of the zoo and also just the San Antonio skyline. It's really gorgeous, y'all. And then, as always, the conference will include site tours to local programs in the city. It's going to be great. We hope to see many of you as attendees, but also maybe as presenters. And so that's a nice segue into sharing that our call for proposals is opening next month, which is like next week. I can't believe that, but stay tuned for that big announcement, which will also include the conference theme and format. I think that's all I have for you all. Thank you again so much for joining us today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day and week. We'll see you all again soon.